We've got this bombarder rig, fly fishing. Keeping it light on the lures as well. Take your pick. And in today's video, I just want to show the options that you've got rather than just using those big 4-5 ounce leads, strings of 6 feathers that everyone knows about. So yes, it is the most efficient way of catching mackerel from the shore. Big weights, fizzing it through the water with those strings of feathers or those silver fleck traces that we all know work really well. Today though, we're going to make it a little bit harder on ourselves. We're going to be using a light lure rod with a very small lure. We'll give them a go on float as well. We've got a little fly here and we'll be using this bombarder weighted type of float just to see if that gives us another option, because the mackerel are such a hard fighting fish and they're deserving of our respect. I see a lot of people, it looks more like a factory setup. We've got people here today, they've got strings of 12 hooks. So as soon as I'm well aware the tide's coming in. As soon as you hook a fish, you know, you've got another 5 or 6 to deal with. It's not what we're about on this channel, so I just want to give a few options. As I say, we'll even try the finessed option of fly fishing. I'm not a fly fishing caster by any means, and you'll see that later. But a single mackerel on the fly rod is going to be something else, so I'm looking forward to using those methods. So obviously fly fishing is going to be harder to catch a mackerel. It's not the most effective, but it's got to be more fun. It's very challenging. On the other end of this line is a fluorocarbon leader, 20 pounds, and then it should be attached to that main line, and I'm using fluorocarbon on all of these. There we go, that's our fly rod. To say, in terms of casting tips, I'm sure there's better ones on YouTube than here, but so really what I wanted to do is give an indication of how much effort's required using this method. I just want to show you a sort of reason why we're here doing this video. Well, it's a little bit crazy, and it's not my preferred method of catching mackerel, which is the catalyst for this video really. Going to look at some different methods, but just before we do, look at this. Oh, this is just crazy. Is this fishing? It's more like a factory, isn't it, when these mackerel are in? I mean, all having a lovely time, and they'll get some food to take home for tea, but standing shoulder to shoulder, casting over each other, tangling the lines. Strings of 12. It's not for me. Probably the most effective way, casting out. Let's watch him cast, shall we? Go on, son. Got to be careful of it. Oh, a little run up. Got to be careful of everyone else as well. Head off first. They got much white bait in them. Yeah. Beautiful. And when you've got a bag full, you're sort of almost halving your weight on the way back, aren't you? Lovely. Thanks for that. Cheers. Yeah, I see what you're doing there. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, lost your rod tip. Yeah. You got line attached? Ah, okay. Yeah. Shoulder to shoulder. I know it gets a lot worse. Places like the Admiralty Pier, Brighton as well, but everyone packed in here fishing for mackerel is kind of the incentive for this video really. Is to try something a little bit different. So again, rather than using the feathers, we're going to be using this Nice light lure rod setup. We've got a gunky warm up with a Shimano Dialuna tip here, and we've got braided line onto the fluorocarbon. As you can see, this is a nice little lure. This is an Amazon jobby, missing an Amazon one, just with a single treble on there. Let's see if there's any small mackerel. Again, I'm just trying to replicate those bait fish. You see here, we went fishing in the morning and managed to catch. So this is actually some footage from a few weeks ago where, although I was fishing for bass on these plugs, I couldn't stop catching the mackerel. And I've had to show some old footage because I wasn't doing too well with this Amazon one
surrounded by
today. But you can see here what the conditions are like, and it does rely, if you want to catch mackerel using these harder methods, it does rely on the bait fish and stuff being
nice
in
big one.
En masse, which is
getting two at a time
here. You
now
can
on
see
these
thousands of bait fish that the mackerel are after. So maybe it's worth doing it only when the mackerel are in these sort of good numbers. But there's a real joy in actually playing the mackerel. You notice that they sort of zigzag from left to right. They've got a real distinct way of fighting, and you don't experience that with those heavier weights and all the feathers. But it's harder to catch, that's the problem. Have you caught a mackerel on a plug or a lure of some sort? I'd love to know in the comments if it's something you've done. So far though, in terms of fish caught, I'm a long way behind our friends on the beach. And put on these single metals as well. So with the float rig you can use big cigar floats, or what I'm using today is actually a Bombarder type weighted float. So this is heavy, but it does float. The orange bit sticks out of the water. You should be able to see it a bit better, but it'll run up and down the line. The advantage of this is you can use a really light lure, something like a feather, and that will sink down underneath this. What a great way to target these mackerel. The advantage is you can cast a fair enough way with the Bombarder float as well. You do need a good strong current though, just to get some action into that lure. I just put a little bead on that side because sometimes that gets jammed on the actual lure, but what it does mean is when you're casting, that is a nice little bullet to cast. And then you're just waiting for that fly obviously to start drifting in the tide a little bit lower than the float. There are mackerel shoals out there, you can just about pick them out, but as it gets dark and the tide starts to ebb, I think things will pick up. Most of the time you are going to need to weight that fly a little bit underneath the float just to make sure it sinks through the water. So something like some shot might be a bit of improvement here. So this is the main line. I'm using monofilament today, but you can use braid, and I either use power gum on here, tie a little loop knot on there, tie a knot on there with power gum, or I use these little float stops. They've got a little hook on the end, and then you just put that hook over the line like this. Easier said than done, isn't it? Like that, and you hold both bits of the line there and then put that on. So on there now is a stop, but you do need a bead and then a float. I'm going to put that float on so the line goes through. And then at the other side you still want a bead on this. You still want a bead on this end as well, because it stops it jamming on the fly or whatever you got on the other end. So I'm going to actually put some fluorocarbon on this end. Another stop on there. So you've got a stop knot, a bead, float, bead and stop knot, and then I do like a bit of fluorocarbon tied on. You can attach this on to a swivel, or you can attach this on with a swivel or use an FG knot, but because we're chopping and changing a bit today, I'm just going to tie on like a double uni knot on there, moisten it back on yourself. As I say, braid's another good one. So with this bombarder rig, we've got a few options actually. I mean, you can have lures, metals, but actually the advantage is you'll be able to put a fly like this at distance. We might actually weight it down with a bit of shot, so we're going to tie that onto the fluorocarbon length on here. Same thing, using that uni knot. And this replicates those little bait fish that the mackerel like chasing. Okay, so with this fly fishing then, the aim is to get that out there. So admittedly, I don't really know what I'm doing with fly fishing. You will get better tuition on YouTube about how to cast a fly and all about the intricacies of fly fishing. It is a really good way to learn watercraft. I'm okay with that, but some of the casting I won't be, so take this next bit with a pinch of salt. But this is how you cast a fly, sort of. So the idea of this video is just an introduction really to the different methods, but in terms of the line for fly fishing, I don't like a sinking line. An intermediate line that's double tapered so it's thin on both ends, I find easiest to use from the sea. It sinks just on the tip a little bit. Where the tip meets the fluorocarbon, the line will sink down. And then you're in sort of control really of this lure. You're moving it through the water, and that's what I mean when I was talking about watercraft. It really teaches you watercraft, certainly mending the line and just having a really good understanding of what that fly's doing in the water, trying to mimic the bait fish. I really do appreciate my knowledge in this area is just touching the surface, but it's enough to get me out there fishing for these mackerel. So with my casting, the back cast, I need to leave my hand in that back position a lot longer. Take your time and then move it forwards. But you can see, I think, and hopefully this is all I really wanted to get across, there are other ways of catching these mackerel, although we didn't manage one today on the fly. And I really think a lot of it is, if the mackerel are there in good numbers, maybe have a fly rod ready to go. With the fly rod here then, you've got a centre pin reel, just a single centre pin, lots of plastic parts on this LC that I like, mounted on the butt there, cork handle, very traditional, and then you've got a line here which is slightly weighted. This is actually an intermediate, what they call an intermediate line, and lines have different tapering and different weighting systems. So I don't profess to know the absolute ins and outs, but this has got like a weight forward, basically vary how you cast. In the sea, I found a sinking line just gets snagged almost straight away, so we want this to slowly sink. So have you had any experience fishing with the fly? I have done it quite a bit from the kayak where it doesn't need the casting. It is a terrific method. Have you done it? Let us know in the comments. I'd be interested to find out. I don't need your casting tips though. The easiest way to do it really, which is we all know, with feathers, and that's the most efficient. I tend to cut them into 6 into 3. Sabikis are quite good. These sort of Hawkeye type ones as well. You could use 6. I've seen people use 12. It's really efficient, but who wants to do it? you'll catch more fish than I will today, but that's how we're going to do it anyway. We'll give a go with the 4 feathers first. You can attach a small weight to the end there, about 20 grams, or mix it up with something like that. Obviously you run the risk, and it is a risk of getting more than one mackerel because they all go in different directions. Some people love it, not for me. Tend to open them out of the packet, keep them on the got 3 feathers on there, which I prefer to the 6. They'll come in these packets with 2 ends. One end has got a swivel, one end has got a swivel. Nice to see a little diamond shape on that swivel. That attaches to the main line coming off the reel of your rod, and then the clip on the other end goes to your weight. Now you can utilise that other clip by using another lure, a weighted lure instead of a weight. That might look more attractive to the fish, but actually most efficient, you know, is even a grip lead will fizz through the water better than these little bombs. But very simply, that's a 1 ounce bomb there with 3 hooks. It's kind of a compromise between the 2 sort of methods we're looking at. You don't necessarily need 5 ounces. That's a 1 ounce bomb, easy to sort of cast single-handed. I've been pushed right out where I don't want to be for these mackerel, and yeah, guess what, I didn't catch any. But again, this is just really just to show it's another method whereby you can catch mackerel, maybe get 2 or 3 on the same line, which would be something else, and you're not using masses of hooks either. Just let that sink down, lift it up and bring it back. Also the rod you use, you can rate the rod as well to a 3 ounce rod. Things like bass rods are actually quite good for mackerel fishing, or even carp rods with a bigger fixed spool, 4,000 size. So if you actually want to catch a mackerel, then don't copy these 3 methods. It's a lot harder, but there will be a time where you do connect with them. And as we come into October, there'll still be mackerel about to try and
yeah,
catch.
we're in.
Just look out for those big
Feels like a mackerel again.
It's more than one way to catch a mackerel.